short notice, and I see very senior people of the two agencies here. We really appreciate that. The reason why we had to do this is because of the urgency of the matter at hand. A lot of Nigerians across the world have one problem or the other, which I know we're all working assiduously to try and resolve. But the issue of Sulaiman Olufemi, who Amnesty International believe has been forgotten on death row in Saudi Arabia, is one of great priority because it's time-bound and involves life. Well, that's why we have invited the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Nigerians in Diaspora Commission, sequel to a petition which was placed on the floor, which was presented on the floor of the House and laid before the House yesterday afternoon. It was referred to petitions, and petitions has referred it back to diaspora. The diaspora should urgently take whatever action was necessary to try and appeal, if possible, to the Saudi government not to go ahead with the execution. We will appreciate if the Ministry of Foreign Affairs would start off the session.
Before I get into the current status, I would like to give a brief background to this issue that has been on from our records since 2002. Now, Mr. Olufemi was alleged to have killed a policeman during a mob action in Jeddah in 2002. Since it was a mob action, a lot of people were involved and a lot of people were arrested, and they were sorted out according to their level of involvement. At the end of the day, about 12 of them were arraigned before a Saudi court. And Mr. Olufemi was alleged to have been the person who killed the policeman out of the group. And the others were sentenced to various jail terms, and some of them have even served their terms in Saudi prisons, and they have been released and deported. Mr. Olufemi went through the judicial process and he was convicted of murder. But as at the time of the crime, the deceased policeman did not have a child, but his wife was pregnant. Now, part of the Saudi legal procedure in such a case is that the family of the victim can exercise the right of pardon and allow a situation where a kind of ransom or blood money will be paid and the person can be discharged and acquitted on that basis. Now, with that in mind, the judgment was not executed on this, on Mr. Olufemi, because they have to await, the coming of age of the child of the policeman. So that is the situation with this case. But I want to inform this honorable committee that the ministry has been involved in this case right from 2002. And the ministry has not forgotten Mr. Olufemi in any way. There has been engagements with the larger family of the victim, and there has been engagement with the judicial authorities of the Saudis. And the only process we are awaiting is for the daughter of this policeman, who is envisaged that will be 18 by October 2020. Now, there has been engagement with the family in terms of getting the family to just accept some kind of ransom so that Mr. Olufemi could be released. And the form of ransom will be dictated by what is obtained in Saudi laws for what may be called as blood money, if you like, and that's where we are. On the other side, considering the numerous consular cases and some of these cases that are really serious and critical, Mr. President has directed the Attorney General of the Federation to engage the Minister of Justice of Saudi and have a discussion on these and so many other cases. As at this week, we have gotten an appointment for the Attorney General to see the Minister of Justice of Saudi, and is scheduled for 1st of March. Now, this is essentially the background to this case, but I want to underscore the issue of judicial process in other countries, not only Saudi. Where you have an established legal process in another country, is always, a challenge to be able to exert influence on such a process. It requires a lot of engagement and a lot of diplomatic entreaties to be able to open discussion where a case is already in court. So it's important for us to understand and appreciate these are issues that are being discussed outside the realm of court. Because once an issue is in court, and especially when there is a decision, there is need to deploy some other approach or initiatives that will resolve the issue. So it's important for us to appreciate that fact, to appreciate again that the only channel that we can resolve some of these issues are underlining diplomatic and other measures that are not necessarily out, in the public. So I want us to appreciate the fact that the officials of government in charge of the mission in Jeddah and Riyadh, they are on top of most of these issues. But of course, we have other complications when you are dealing with such issues that are already in court, and they may not be as easy. I know we have recorded some successes in the last few months, which is raising the expectation actually. But even with that, you need to have, a convergence of interventions, sometimes like in this case also at the highest level. So where Mr. President will have to get involved, will have to direct other lines of authorities to get involved in the engagement to try and, achieve, some kind of resolution. While we understand the concern, especially the immediate families of those that are involved, we also want to establish that the government is equally concerned. And we have, like the President always says, we have a responsibility to all our citizens, wherever they are, whatever they may have done, and whatever the situation they find themselves. Now that is essentially the citizen-centered diplomacy that this government is pursuing. So I think and I believe that we are making good progress. The legal processes in other countries are more difficult to break in than the ones we understand here. So it's very important for us to, exercise caution even in terms of what we say and what we try to do, because perhaps the more you push from the pressure point, the more rigid system you have to deal with. And I think it's important for us to appreciate that. I will maybe conclude or stop here, Honorable Chair and members, for a good appreciation of the situation that we are in. Thank you so much.
Very much, Honorable Chair. My name is Oluwatosin Popola. Once again, I would like to thank everyone for the opportunity you've given to Amnesty International to present this case before you all. Amnesty International has been working on this case since 2002 when the matter started, and we are well versed about the issues around this case, particularly the other co-defendants who were released in 2017. One of them died in prison, and the 11 others, after finishing their 15-year prison term and 1,000 lashes, were deported back to Nigeria. In fact, as we speak, 3 of them are on standby in Lagos who are able to corroborate information regarding what happened because they were all charged together. Sulaiman Olufemi went to Saudi Arabia on a numeral visa. We've detailed a summary, given a summary of the okay. We've detailed as a summary of the case in a briefing which we brought here today, which we are able to, with your permission, distribute to people present. He went to Saudi Arabia in 2002 in September on a numeral visa, and he was meant to stay with a friend of his in Jeddah. He called a friend but couldn't get through, and then he was advised by a lady he met at the airport to go to Karantina, a part of Jeddah, where he would find several other Nigerians. He went there but couldn't locate his friend, but the Nigerians he met there offered him accommodation. A few days later, he followed those Nigerians to Bab Sharif, another area of Jeddah, where apparently Nigerians and other foreign nationals wash cars for a living. And it was on that day that this incident occurred, where there was a fracas, and due to the fact that a number of Saudi locals with guns and including police officers came to raid the area. Sulaiman Olufemi has maintained his innocence. According to him, he was not involved with the incident. He went back to his accommodation. But the next day, after the police officer was said to have died, several foreign nationals, including Nigerians, were rounded up in their homes. We understand that over 500 foreign nationals were rounded up. But at the end of the day, many of these foreign nationals were released and deported. But 13 Nigerians, including Sulaiman Olufemi, was put on trial for the incident and for the death of the police officer. Unfortunately, he was the only one. They all allege, the 13 Nigerians, that they were tortured. And we know from our work in Amnesty International that torture is prevalent in Saudi Arabia. And this is not the first case where we've documented of torture and of people being forced to thumbprint or sign confessional statements in Arabic. So they were all tortured, and even the returnees from Saudi Arabia all corroborate this information that they were all tortured. But unfortunately, Sulaiman Olufemi, who was the youngest of the group, was the first person to crack under torture, and he was the first person to put his fingerprint on the confessional statement in Arabic. It was only when he got to court that he realized that the statement states that he admitted to having hit the police officer on the head with a gun, and despite the fact that he maintained his innocence. Unfortunately, they were not provided with any legal representation. Also, the Nigerian embassy was not contacted immediately, and they didn't have any consular assistance, which is contrary to international standards on this issue. So it's an unfortunate case of a young man who went to Saudi Arabia a few days after I got there, got into trouble that he wasn't involved in. So we are very grateful for the opportunity you've given us, particularly with a piece of information we've received today from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that the daughter of the deceased police officer will turn 18 in October. Because there's a lack of transparency on the part of the Saudi authorities. We have engaged with them a number of times, and I think the last we heard from them was when they wrote to Amnesty International in 2007 that the death sentence has been ratified by the highest courts, the Supreme Judicial Council in Saudi Arabia. And if not for the fact that the daughter of the deceased, had to be of age, the king will have ratified this death sentence, and he will have been executed. Last year, 184 people were executed in Saudi Arabia, including a number of Nigerians. So we take these issues very seriously, and we're very grateful that you're also taking these issues seriously, because execution is not, the Saudi authorities do not relent in carrying out the executions if they want to. So that's, in a nutshell, is the case, and we would urge you all to read the briefing, which we have included important facts for you to rely on later on. I'm very grateful for the opportunity, Honorable Chair.
It's not a new case to the ministry, but we should also appreciate something. This case has been on for 18 years. Amnesty International can come to us now, today, because President Buhari has made it a priority to intervene in the welfare of Nigerians abroad. It's under his presidency that we had the very first case we had where we could get somebody out of prison in Saudi. So I think we should appreciate the efforts of this administration in working for the welfare of Nigerians in the diaspora. They didn't come 4 years ago, they didn't come 8 years ago, but they are coming today because they believe there's a ray of hope. Because we have a president who has, made it a priority to intervene in cases of Nigerians in the diaspora. As the PAMSEC has said, their law is their law. That is their law. You kill the police officer, whether rightly or wrongly, they kill you. But we are also working with the ministry to ensure that with diplomatic and political intervention, this may just be another case of success. As you know, just 2 days ago, working with our mission in Saudi, the governor of Zamfara, our legal team, Office Attorney General, again, we're able to get a Nigerian out who was innocent of drug issues. But we're able to present the evidence that somebody else carried the drugs. But because of that evidence that we showed to them, working with this team that I said, they were able to release the guy. Even after releasing him, they can still appeal the sentence, and they will not release him until they decide whether to appeal or not. So again, Nigeria should understand the laws of other countries where they go to. And like the PAMSEC said, it is their law. What Amnesty should be doing is talking to Saudi Arabia to change their penalties. Nigeria can do this because of the respect for Mr. President. They don't listen to anybody. So we're hoping that, as the PAMSEC has said, with the President's intervention, the Attorney General has been involved in this case. He's talking to his counterpart in Saudi Arabia, but we understand that their law is their law. But we'll do all we can. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Office of Attorney General of the Federation, who was already speaking with the Attorney General in Saudi to see whether this again can be another exception. And again, Madam Chairman, thank you for your ever proactive approach to matters like this and for making this a priority, coming yesterday and dealing with this today. So we are with the family of Olufemi, and we really do hope that, again, Nigeria will be able to save him in this situation. Thank you very much.
We understand that under Saudi laws, that if the victim, or even if the young lady decides to accept diya, which is compensation money, that a judge in Saudi Arabia can still invoke the power of had, which I understand is divinely prescribed fixed offenses and punishments, and can still consider the murder as harmful to public order, in addition to it being a crime against the victim and his family, and still approve execution. I'm sure it's something the ministry is aware of. It's just that it's concerning to us that even if the young lady accepts or requests that it should not be executed, we understand that the authorities could still overrule that, and we all know that that's something that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs will bear in mind in their engagement. Thank you very much, ma'am.
A lot of work to do with Saudi. You know what I'm saying? It's not that you have a lot of work to do. Honorable Chair, as we're still engaging with them yesterday, day before yesterday, even last, because we have, like I said, our people are there, they are still insisting. And they said something, that why would somebody looking for Umrah be involved in a mob action? So there are many, whatever, we don't need to go into it, but a young man happened to come from Lagos State, happened to come from Badagry, we'll go all out of our way to even see whatever can be done. But again, maybe an opportunity to also tell our people, there are some things that can be avoided. Because they still spoke to us a few days ago. I said, okay, you said he came from, what is he doing with? And they were by 100, it was a mob action. Somebody held the gun and they said it's him. We're praying it's not him. And we're praying that this intervention will yield results. But again, Amnesty International, face where you should face, which is those countries that have this kind of laws. And again, like he said, and the chairman said, they don't see laws as we see them. We can be lax with what we do. They are not. And according to Sharia laws, if you kill someone that doesn't deserve to be killed, you will be killed. So as far as they are concerned, whoever is sentenced to death deserves it. So all we are saying is appealing to their emotions. They don't do emotions with law. We do emotions with law here. They don't. So we're hoping that with your intervention, Madam Chairman, with the intervention of the Attorney General, we can save this soul. But at the same time, we keep warning our citizens, don't be where you shouldn't be. So we're praying so that we succeed in this case, but the most likely thing is that that girl will be 18 in October. Is it a girl or a boy? And that she will see reason to say, pay the blood money and go. That's the most likely thing, Madam Chairperson. And the ministry has been pursuing it. In fact, they've gone very, very far. It's just that we don't need to go into the full details so that we succeed, so that the ministry succeeds what they're doing. But Amnesty International, please work with those countries, talk to them to change their laws. Also work with our youth, obey laws of other countries so I don't get into trouble. Thank you very much.
You said the word if. If. So he could be guilty, he could be innocent. We all know what the meaning of torture is. I don't know, as a human being, if I could withstand torture and continue to maintain my innocence in the face of torture and not crack. So I will not hold that boy responsible for signing a document he did not read, he did not understand, because you do not know the level of torture. We've seen some things on the movies. We've seen the level of what the humanity. Let's not even go into that, because when we start talking about that, it could bring tears to the faces of some emotional people like me. But the bottom line is, if that gentleman was tortured, then he could have signed anything. There are cases of Nigerians who have gone to visit places, even on holiday, and happen to go and visit someone's house, not knowing what goes on in that house. Visit an old friend you went to high school with, and that is the day that house is raided. Can we blame them for going to visit a friend? In this case, he went to an area where he felt he could find his people who could lead him to the person he was looking for. And let's even assume that wasn't the case. Let's even assume he went, let's even assume he went to Umrah and then decided to go to that area and hang out with Nigerians. That doesn't mean he deserves to die. So as long as the if is there, we will appreciate if, like you said, the executive is doing whatever can be done to ensure that the Saudi government are merciful on this matter, and therefore we are able to save a life. He's been in jail since the age of 24. He's been in jail for 18 years. Because of that, if he is innocent.
Remember this petition came up a few days ago, and we were able to put together this team to look at the issues. I also commend Mr. President from what we are told on his interest on Nigerians in diaspora that has issues. Now, my own opinion is that Mr. Olufemi cannot be guilty of this offense. Because when you talk about mob action, you cannot convict one single person on a mob action. Mob action means there were many. So how come they single out one person as the murderer of a policeman in a supposedly mob action? So for me, there's something wrong there. And again, you talk about that he was forced to sign a document. Ordinarily, if they have to interpret it to the language you understand, and you sign the translated one, not the one in Saudi. So, but that is crying over spilled milk. Now, the crux of this matter is that this girl, who is turning 18 in October, holds the ace. And it depends on what she's being told. What are they telling her? I think the Amnesty International has a duty to try and get the girl to understand that, look, this is not the way they are putting it. Because I think from what they are saying, it is the girl that holds the aces. It's the girl that will say in a few months' time, okay, I'll take blood money. And what informs her to say those things will depend on what she's being told. So that is my humble suggestion and contribution.
To talk more about that if. Because that if is there. If this was a case that was a clear-cut case, it's a different situation. But as long as that if is there, we not only should focus on the young lady, but we should also focus on the fact that this young man may be innocent. So in engaging, Mr. PS, this is actually focused on you. In your engagements, it is important that you engage with the perception that this young man may be innocent. And if the young girl agrees, once the perception is that he may be innocent, then I don't think any judge who has the fear of Allah, the fear of God, will knowingly execute or sign a document to execute an innocent person once there's that element of doubt. So it will be most appreciated that that element of doubt that has been stressed here by the documentation we have seen, by the statements that have been made by the 11 other victims who have returned to Nigeria by being deported. They are ready to sign statements to say this young man was not the one who perpetrated the crime. Yes, he was in that neighborhood at the time, but he was not involved with the attack on the policeman. There's a doubt. So please, it will be very important. And at the same time, I believe everybody has made their statements, everybody has contributed, but I must stress one thing. I do thank Mr. President that under his tenure, Nigeria is seen as a nation that goes out there when its citizens have a problem. Because for many years, we were known as a nation that abandoned our citizens in the time of trouble. So definitely, we're not saying we don't appreciate what Mr. President is doing. We do appreciate it. And we do appreciate the efforts of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Now you know how old I am. Ministry of External Affairs. No, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We thank you for your involvement in this case and many other cases. Unfortunately, you will be hearing more from me because I have many cases that have come to my desk. Some of them indeed are innocent. Some of them are not even criminal cases. They're just cases of Nigerians who are due for deportation but do not have the funds to buy their own tickets and have been held in jails all over the world, in India. There's some in Ivory Coast at the moment. So you will hear from me again. There is a case of some policemen, 4 policemen and a civilian, who were sent by the Nigerian police on an investigation to a neighboring country, and they have been missing for, I believe it's been about 4 years now. And the Nigerian police will not tell their families anything about what is going on with them. So you will hear a lot from this committee because we are responsible for Nigerians who are in diaspora. And once we feel that our citizens are not being properly treated, we will come to you. So we may seem to be unfriendly sometimes, not because we choose to be unfriendly, but because what matters and what is paramount to us is the life, the safety of our Nigerian citizens in diaspora. So once again, I thank Mr. President for all his support. I have once been a Nigerian in diaspora, and I know what situations happened in my time. That was like 30 years ago. I know the kind of situations Nigerians were faced with abroad without any intervention. But thank you again, Mr. President. Thank you, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Thank you very much, Nigeria in Diaspora Commission. Thank you, Amnesty International. Thank you for all these cases you take all across the world. Thank you for flying all the way from England because of Sulaiman. Thank you, Mr. Tommy, right? Mr. Tosin, thank you so much, because he came all the way from Amnesty UK because of Sulaiman. Thank you very much, everybody. The media that are here present, thank you so much. I implore everybody, please say a prayer for Sulaiman that he may find favor and he may come back home to his parents. Thank you very much, everybody.